If you're running a 7 or 8 figure business right now and you're trying to figure out what actually matters versus all the noise that's out there, you're in the right place. Here's what I see constantly. Successful entrepreneurs who built something real, but they're still stuck making every decision, fighting fires, and wondering if maybe there's a smarter way to do this. Well, you've got the revenue, you've got the team, but something's still not clicking. I've been coaching business owners since 2002, from $1 million startups to $150 million companies. Last year alone, my clients averaged $2.3 million in revenue growth and $420,000 in profit increases. Not from working harder, but from working smarter. So in the next roughly half hour, I'm going to give you 24 lessons plus some bonus ones that took me over 2 decades to learn. The frameworks for strategy, leadership, execution, and building a business that actually serves your life. No fluff, no motivational speeches, just what works. All right, so let's go. I'm just going to share with you a little framework first. We're going to do 24 lessons from the last 24 years. But before I get into the individual lessons, I want to just show you this triangle framework I use, which is the foundation for what I do with pretty much all my clients. At the center of this is what you want, which is 7 or 8 figure freedom as an entrepreneur. Now, with 7 or 8 figure freedom as an objective, you got to know what stands in the way of that. And what I see over and over again is there's really 3 things that keep entrepreneurs from getting there. The first is what I call foggy figures. They don't know how to read the numbers. All they look at is basically the top line sales number and what's in the bank account, and that's it. And so the business, the books tell you a story. And if you don't know how to read the story, you don't know the information that's being told to you. And so foggy figures keeps you from making smart, informed decisions. The trust trap is if you want to exit a business, or if you want to not have to be there all the time as the business owner, you have to trust other people to do it. So the trust trap is that gap between your ability to rely on your people to do the things you want them to do, which keeps you trapped doing things in the business. And then finally, most entrepreneurs I meet, they're sort of playing whack-a-mole. They're doing 24 things at once all the time, rather than really focusing on what is the top priority. And so that's the priority paralysis. So to overcome those things, there's some things you need to do. You need to know the numbers. That is we're going to talk about in this. I'm going to share the 24 lessons over 3 categories with 8 lessons in each one. And the first is going to be some lessons about the numbers. Then there's having a winning team. Those are the people. What do you do to build a culture and get the right people in place to help you achieve your objectives? And then finally, you got to have a winning game plan. So if you think of this as like a sports metaphor, you can't win if you don't know how to keep score. You can't win if you don't have a winning team. And you can't win if you don't have a winning game plan. So those are the 3 categories of things that we need to look at. So we're going to start with the last one, which is the priority paralysis or strategic planning. I'm just going to shift this a little bit so it's easier to see. So the first category is strategic planning. And the first lesson is this. The number one question you have to ask in strategy, I find it's fascinating. I talk to entrepreneurs about this all the time. And they're always, Warren's going to ask me, what's the objective? Because that's such an important question, but it's one that isn't asked enough. If you don't know where you're going, then any plan is going to get you there, right? But objectives exist at different levels. What's my objective in my life? What's my objective for my business long term? What has to happen in the next 5 years? What's my 1-year goal? What needs to be achieved in the next 90 days? So you can have strategic objectives at different levels, and you should have. Otherwise, you don't know what you're aiming for. Next question. Why? This is the second lesson. The world doesn't need more greedy people. It needs people who want to make things better. Make money while making the world a better place, by all means. We live in a value for value economy. So if you're making the world better while delivering a product or service, you're creating more value, and therefore you should derive more value. 3, a goal without a plan is just a wish. Lots of coachy types like me like to help people set big, audacious goals and tell them to visualize and dream and manifest and all that good stuff. But you need to have a plan to get there. Otherwise, you're just dreaming and wishing. 4, what happens on the field differs from the plan, but without the plan, you get your butt kicked. That's what every military commander and every sports coach will tell you. The plan gives you a framework for decision-making when the unexpected happens. So a lot of people resist planning because they think there's unknowns out there. But here's the thing. If you think of like a poker game, people think poker is a game of chance. It isn't. It's a game of skill in which chance is an element. A rookie may beat a pro in a given hand, but a pro will always win the game. Why? Because there's skill involved, even though there are unknowns in chance. So having a plan gives you a framework for decision making so you can prioritize the right things when the unexpected happens. So don't use things are unknown as an excuse for not developing a strategy. A plan is not just a to-do list. Sometimes I see people doing planning and they list out the things they're going to do and they think they have a plan. It's not. A plan is a to-do, by when and by whom and with what resources. If it's just a list of steps, people will think someone else is going to do something, or it just doesn't get started until it's actually due, and therefore it's late and you don't wind up achieving your objectives. So make sure you have each of those. What the objective is, what you're going to do, who's going to do it, when it's going to be done. And then associated with that, a plan that doesn't have resources is one that is going to fail, right? The resources you have to work with as an entrepreneur are time, team, and money. That's it. You need to know how much of each of those you have and whether what you have is sufficient. If it isn't, you got to change your plan because it's not going to work otherwise. 7, planning. The planning is as important, maybe even more important than the plan itself. The exercise of analyzing what's working or not, of thinking about where you want to be, about what resources you have and need, all of that gives you so many insights that brings you into the present and into reality. Next, execution. You need a system for execution. Plans fail in execution. Probably 80% of plans that fail because of execution. Just relying on discipline is dumb. And it's ineffective. You need to have a system to make sure people know what they're to do, when they have to report in on it, and how you hold them accountable. I have something I call the START system for accountability. It stands for Senior Team Accountability, Reporting, and To-Dos. And it's a very, very simple process that makes sure that the plan you create is the plan that gets executed. All right, next is the numbers. So let's take a look at this. First one in the numbers. The profit and bank account aren't enough. You need to have more information than that. Those things tell you what happened. They don't give you good information on what to do or what may be coming. Second, revenue is vanity, profit is sanity. Everybody, you'll hear it on the news and you'll look at it in reports and magazines. People brag about their revenue. I've known people who've had big revenue numbers and they're not taking home very much money at all because their costs are too high. So you need to be looking at profit. Yet, revenue is the top exercise that drives profitability, but there's a whole bunch of other things. So you measure your success by your profitability, not just by your revenue number. Your revenue, you get to go to the bar and brag to your friends about, but the profits was what's going to determine your life. Subject to this third one, profit is pretty, cash is king. Your job as an entrepreneur, as the leader, as the CEO, is to convert profit into cash. You cannot go to the restaurant and say, I'd like to pay my bill in profit. You got to pay it with money. And so there's lots of reasons why profit doesn't equal cash. You could have it all tied up in receivables. You may have invested in capital assets, so you can't access the money, right? So you need some fluidity and liquidity. So you need to make sure that you are converting your profit into cash all the time. And so one of the books that you need to look at is your statement of cash flows. Again, most entrepreneurs, almost everybody looks at their P&L. Some look at their balance sheet. Those are the ones that are getting more sophisticated. Most never glance at their cash flow statement. But that tells you how well you are converting your profit into cash. 4, they're called the books because they tell a story. So you need to know to read them. So the language of business is numbers. If you can't speak the language, you don't know the story. All right? So you need to pay attention to what the books are telling you. 5, numbers aren't just from financials, right? We look at the books, but you need to track non-financial numbers as well. So that's things like your marketing numbers, for instance. How many leads did you get? What's your conversion rate? What's your customer acquisition cost? What's your employee satisfaction score, your customer satisfaction score? How much churn do you have in your customers? What's your employee retention? All of these numbers tell you things that are really, really important. 6, choose your key performance indicators. You probably heard the term KPI. KPI stands for key performance indicators. What some people do, and it's sort of a stage in the evolution of entrepreneurs, they get the idea that they need to have metrics. Maybe they've been part of a group and they've heard of other entrepreneurs getting their metrics, and so they got to want some metrics. And they come out with like 97 of them. You can't manage a business with 97 performance indicators. Now, you may have 97 that's different people are allocated to assessing the performance on those numbers, but you as the leader, you need to have a small number of key performance indicators that give you the overall sense of the health of the business. And you think of it like a dashboard on a car. When a little red light goes on in the car, you don't know yet what the problem is. You just know that there is a problem, and you know you need to investigate further. So you, as the leader, need to have a dashboard of key numbers that tell you that something ain't right. Now, I can't sit here and tell you what those key performance indicators are because they're different for different businesses. There's a great story about an airline that they brought in some consultants. They were having big problems with their profitability, with employee churn, with customer satisfaction numbers. And they came in and they went, you have one number. Your one number is on-time arrival. Because when planes arrive late, the airport charges extra fees. Customers get cranky. They start grousing at the staff. The staff get unhappy. People lose their luggage. They get unhappy. They lose customers. So they said on-time arrival is your one number. Everything started to revolve around that. So if any airplane was in the air and was scheduled to be late, the president of the airline got notified and was on the call to the regional manager talking about what they're going to do to improve the arrival of that airplane. Over time, they started arriving on time. Customers were happy. Employees were happy. Their profitability went up. The whole thing turned around because of one number. Now, I'm not saying everybody has just a single number, but the point of that is you don't have on-time arrival probably as your key performance indicator, so you need to find out what it is for you. 7, it's the trend that matters. A lot of people I see, they'll sort of pull out their P&L in a given month or a given quarter and go, I think that's okay. It's not. If I tell you that my goal was to be 175 pounds and I tell you I'm 180, is that good or bad? You don't know, right? It kind of depends whether I was 185 the month before or 176 the month before. It's the trend that tells you whether things are going in the right direction. I had a client once who, after I started working with him, he had just gotten into some problems with his business. And he said, why couldn't I have seen this coming? And I looked at his numbers and I said, you could have, because there was a trend line. His accounts receivable, his age of receivables had gone up. His conversion rate had dropped. His number of leads had declined. His time to closing had elongated. So all this would have told him that your market is starting to change. They're getting nervous. They're hunkering down. They're getting into protective mode. So you should too. But because he wasn't tracking the trend, he didn't see it happening. 8, cash flow projections make for better decisions. Not enough entrepreneurs do cash flow projections. They might look at what's in the bank, but you want to think about what's coming. If you're going into a slow season, for instance, and your cash is near, the balance point, but you're going to a slow season, maybe that's not the time to make the capital investment or hire that expensive employee. But if you sort of say, well, okay, 3 months out, we're going to be drawing in a lot more cash, it looks like, now you can make some smart investment decisions. So I usually suggest doing 3 months out. Make sure you've got cash flow projections out 3 months and be updating them all the time. What some people do with the first time they do this, they do a cash flow projection. They're a month into their 3 months and they haven't adjusted based on reality. And so then their cash flow projection becomes inaccurate. But if you are really running your business with cash flow projections, you're going to have greater confidence in your decisions and you're going to have just better data to make those decisions on. All right. Next is the people. Those are the people that do the work for you, right? So here's number 1. Culture doesn't eat strategy. You may have heard that story, that line, culture eats strategy. I used to say it. I used to believe that. What I say now is culture and strategy are the perfect partners. Strategy defines what's to be done. Culture makes sure that it gets done. So you need to have both of them in place. And when you do, things are going to be fairly exciting. Second, here's the big lie. The lie is your clear vision will inspire your people. You hear people like me say this. Hey, if you have a big vision, your people will rally behind you and that will make them productive. The thing is, everybody's in it for themselves, right? Your vision has to resonate with them, their values, their dreams. They have their own lives. They're working for you because they believe it's somehow going to make their life better. They all like radio station WIIFM. What's in it for me? So you need to make sure that, yes, you should have a vision. I'm a big proponent of having vision statements, and not just a statement, but a clear vision. But you should also make sure that vision aligns with the dreams of the people you have. And that can actually be a very effective tool in recruitment. Third, high performance culture is not the same as a nice culture or a fun culture. Now, I'm not saying culture shouldn't be nice or fun, but high performance is something a little bit different. I've had clients who've done the foosball table and the lunch on Fridays and the personal trainer and in the gym in the basement and all that kind of stuff. And then when something bad happens, they kind of jump like rats off a sinking ship. So high performance culture is one where you are not just providing all the time, but one in which there's a mutual exchange of expectations. You need to have expectations that people are going to perform, and then you provide for them an environment that is nice, that is respectful, that is safe, that is fun, but that comes with expectations of performance. And when you do that, then you wind up getting a culture that, frankly, other people want to be part of because it's a lot more enjoyable. 4. Now, this will sound maybe slightly different from what I just said, but it's not. 3 strikes and they're out. Now, what I mean by that is I have just seen this over and over again over the last 24 years. If you are having the same negative performance conversation with somebody 3 times, they're not going to change, and it's not going to work. And every time I've seen that happen, eventually that person leaves. So why drag it out and belabor it? If you're having that same conversation, just end it, right? You just do the dignified, respectful way of terminating, but then terminate, because you're going to make other people in the organization unhappy. 5, values are defeated by misaligned systems. What that means, a lot of people say, as long as you have great culture, great values, that's going to win all the time. Your system's way heavier than that. So here's a perfect example. You have a construction business. It's an outdoor construction business. It's February in a snowy environment. You have a value of safety. You have an incentive plan that pays your project manager based on hitting performance targets. What's the project manager going to do? High probability they're going to push for the productivity, which puts people in an unsafe condition. So you need to make sure that your systems and your incentives are aligned with your stated values. If they're not, you're going to wind up with a problem. 6, people don't leave jobs, they leave bosses. So you need to make sure that your management team is trained on how to be effective managers. I'm actually working with 3 different businesses right now where I'm actually helping their managers just lead more effectively, because they recognize that when the managers sort of don't know what they're doing, or they get afraid and they wind up becoming a bit autocratic, or they're unclear or inconsistent in their expectations, the high performers want to leave. 7, delegation isn't abdication. One of the things that poor leaders do is they kind of dump things onto someone, and then things don't work out, and then they wind up blaming the person, and they wind up terminating people who otherwise could be good performers. So when you are delegating, it is still your responsibility to follow up and make sure things are happening, that people have the resources they need, that they're understanding the instructions, that they're going to deliver on time. Now, you want to build into that some expectations that they're going to report into you. But delegation doesn't mean, I gave something to someone, now I'm hands off and I don't have to worry about it anymore. So if you can make sure both you and your leaders understand that delegating means you're still accountable and responsible. And so you're not just abdicating everything. You're going to wind up getting better results. Finally, values don't live on posters, but in behaviors. So you will see lots and lots of companies who have great values with a poster on the wall. I mean, Enron had their values carved into stone in the base of the building, right? But didn't really hold. So you need to make sure that so there's two steps to this. One is making sure that your values are actually defined in terms of behaviors. Because let's say you have a value of excellence. Well, excellence in an engineering firm is going to look very different than excellence in a design firm or in an event management firm. So you need to define first what those behaviors are, and then you need to be talking about those behaviors all the time with your people. So when something goes well, what behaviors produce that outcome? And how does that align with, which of our values were demonstrated in those behaviors? When something doesn't go well, take out your values and associated behaviors and say, did we live those behaviors? If not, then what would we do to make it different? So it's not enough to just sort of have your values on the wall and talk about them in general terms. And I'll have a corollary to this. Your value statements are not a marketing exercise. I see people all the time stick values on their website that are customer-centric values, which is super important. Like, absolutely have customer-centric values. But they're not necessarily the values about how people behave internally in the organization in their interactions with each other and their work. So you need to make sure that the behaviors are about how people do the work in the course of the day that reflect the values of the organization, right? So those are some super important lessons around people. So those are 24 lessons. I'm going to give you some bonus ones now. These are around on the personal side of things. If you're wanting to make this a really great year for yourself, I have a whole framework I put together called Top Right Living. I've got a 6-week program that I actually do on this. So here's just the real Reader's Digest version of some of this that'll help you and your team hopefully have a great year on a personal level. So the first thing is, on the pleasure side, inside or outside of work, find out what you really enjoy, not what distracts, but what lifts you, what gives you fulfillment. Going on a screen simply throws your brain into suspended animation or gives sort of short dopamine hits. You're looking at things that fulfill you. Try something new every month. I remember my mother said something truly wonderful one time after coming back from some new experience. I think it was some new musical theater or something. And she said, I didn't really like it, but it was sure fun to try. That's a great philosophy. Second, it's your principles, your values. Stay true to them. One of the greatest sources of personal dissatisfaction or personal dissonance is when you know you're violating your own principles or values. Never justify it with that truly horrible saying that it's just business. Make it a just business, and you'll always feel good about yourself. Of course, this means knowing what your own values are, so get clear on your core values first. 3, look after your body. Success demands energy. Make sure you have it. How? I'm not going to presume to dictate a particular regimen here, but here are some of the factors to consider. Sleep. Got to make sure you got good sleep. Movement. And that's not just exercise. Sitting on your ass, except for 1 hour of exercise, still makes you a sedentary creature. Diet. Again, I'm not a dietitian, but generally, if the ingredients look like they're from a chemistry course, probably not natural food, right? Hydrate. But not with booze. Breathing. There are some really good breathing techniques that help calm you or energize you. And recovery. You need to make sure that your neurons, your nervous system has time to reset. Right? There's a reason why athletes train with rest breaks. All right, challenge. Take on a challenge. The brain likes to challenge. That actually makes life more fulfilling. Here's a $1 million question. I mean, literally. Do you have 5 years of experience or 1 year of experience 5 times? If it's closer to the second, then challenge yourself at work or in personal life. You'll find it, and your team will actually find it much more exciting for them if they're doing that as well. 5th is connection. We are a social species, and most studies on happiness, including one that's the most comprehensive longitudinal study over something like 50, 60 years, point out that relationships are critical to happiness. So identify those relationships in your life that you most want to invest in. Being an entrepreneur is hard and can be isolating, Going into the world from a foundation of connection or healthy attachment increases both your resilience and your enjoyment. 6, contribution. This is a great and wonderful paradox of life. The more you give of yourself, the more you are filled. Whether it's doing volunteer work, designing elements of your business to make a positive impact, or just supporting someone who needs it, you will feel better and happier. Now, what if you can combine all of these? A challenge that's fun, that connects you to others, that has an impact, is aligned with your principles, and helps you physically. How great would that be? That might be your business. Now, it may not be possible to find one that ticks all of the boxes, but my point is you can combine, right? I'm part of a group called Give and Grow, and one of the activities we've done is clean up a local river valley. And it's beautiful. We do it as a community. It's physically intense. We always feel just amazing at the end of the day. And then finally, there's appreciation. None of what we've talked about today will make you feel better about your life if you don't notice it. Now, this is slightly different from gratitude. Gratitude flows from this, but here's my observation. People who try to do gratitude journaling and saying things like, I should be grateful for my spouse who's snoring like a freight train beside me in bed, and I should be grateful for my snotty-nosed kids who are mouthing off to me, right? And then they don't feel grateful, and then they feel guilty about it, which makes them feel worse, right? And it's because they're trying to force gratitude, but you can't. But if you just notice good things, that's what I mean by appreciation. Just look around and notice the things, the impact they have on you and on others, then gratitude will start to naturally emerge. And it's very hard to feel sad and grateful at the same time. All right, so there's 24 years compressed into roughly a half an hour. Here's your final one. It's never too late to learn. Right? So there's always things that you can be doing to become better in any of these areas. So here's the thing. Every entrepreneur I work with who's made the jump from good business to great business had one thing in common. They stopped trying to figure it out alone. Not because they weren't smart enough, but because when you're inside your business every day, you can't see what's actually broken. You think it's a team problem when it's really a strategic clarity problem. You think you need better systems when you actually need better structure first. You're too close to it. That's where someone who's done this hundreds of times can look at your business and say, here's what's stuck. Fix this. Everything else gets easier. So if you want that kind of outside perspective on your business, a real look at what's actually holding you back, I've got a few spots open this month for a strategy conversation. The link's in the description. We'll map out your next 90 days, and you'll walk away knowing exactly what to focus on first. I only work with established entrepreneurs running 7- and 8-figure businesses who want both profit and purpose. So if that's you, grab a time.